This is Joanna from Mama Tortuga. I'm so glad to go back to have one of our bilingual sessions. And today is a very special one. Today is bilingual cooking time with our friend Marta from Sense and Edibility. And we're gonna have an amazing time talking about something that both of us really, really love: food. So I found out that, like many people around the world share the same love about food, and in many instances, we don't even know the origins of the foods and the plates and the traditional cuisines that we eat every day. And I think that's a very crucial thing to know of, especially right now raising children, because it's a wonderful way where you can introduce culture, introduce knowledge, introduce roots to your everyday learning. So,
¿Cómo estás?
Muy bien. It's a pleasure to meet you, at least virtually. I've been following all your beautiful recipes for years, and I was going to show everybody I have your book.
Hi, book. That's me with long hair.
Yes, it's a great book. I love all her recipes. I have tried a lot of them, but of course I'm not as successful. But I love your passion for food, for ingredients. So I'm so glad to have this conversation with you.
I'm so glad to be here. It's so exciting. I felt like I was going out to meet a girlfriend for lunch. So, I got all pretty and put on my lipstick. And so I can't wear lipstick anymore with my mask. So it's like now any chance I get, I'll put on lipstick. I don't care.
Definitely. That's a must.
Okay.
I was telling everyone that I love having these conversations because everything we do it has a why. And for me, cooking is one of these things that every family has, like a beloved recipe. Everyone has something that, grandma or auntie or dada, created in their homes. And that's a memory that will last forever. And I feel like it's such an important part of a cultural knowledge. So we shared something about talking about arroz con gandules, which is one of the quintessential recipes of the Caribbean, and it's one of my beloved plants.
That I'm so jealous that you have. So jealous.
But it's a wonderful plant to have. And actually doing some research about this plant, I'm pretty sure a lot of people will be very interested in knowing the origins.
One thing that I really appreciate about what you said about tying cultures together, gandules are special to me because my husband's Abuela Leria, who is was the matriarch of the family, her and I used to sit on her porch and shell gandules together, fresh gandules off of her bush in her garden. And we would sit there and just, shell these gandules, and she would talk to me and tell me about her life. And we would we bonded so much over that one small thing that gandules have a special place in my life now because of her. I already liked them before, but every time I see a fresh gandule especially, I get really sentimental about it. And a lot of people growing up don't have that experience. They don't have the bond of shelling peas or, cooking with their grandmother or cooking with their mom. And to me, that's very special and very important.
Yes, and that's something that actually I want to say that all of us are trying to change for next generations, especially like for me as, Mama Tortuga mission is like going back to the roots, teaching new generations that food comes from a place and the meaning of, growing your own food and the importance of growing our own food. And today I wanted to share with you because I don't know how many people have seen gandules. These are
Yes,
dry,
show
like
it.
these are the dry pods from my
Hmm.
plant. I was planning to, take you to my plant, but the issue is with the connectivity. I don't want to lose everybody.
Yeah.
So you get this beautiful plant that has yellow flowers,
Hmm.
and then I like to let them dry in the plant before get them
Hmm.
because anyways I will always I have my own way to shell them, which is putting them inside this fabric bag and stepping on them.
Look at that.
Yes.
That's
And
creative,
then I
though.
use a fan and I just throw in the little peels will go one way
Hmm.
and the gandules will fall. So it's super fast. The
That's
kids
a
help
lot
me
more
create.
effective than the way I used to do it. Ours was very
Yeah,
labor intensive, and
really.
yeah.
I tried to do that with the kids and they were like there like for 10 minutes and after that they're like, oh, I have to go do something. I was like, oh my gosh, I
I
get
have
a
to go do my
wheel
homework.
on. And then I got these containers, and this is where I keep my personal harvest of gandules.
I love that.
Yeah, so all these were from like two plants, only two plants
Really?
of gandules. Yes, and those I just wanted to share with everybody because I think this is very exciting. Like
That is
gandules.
very, to me, that makes me really excited. Really, it really does.
The plant name, the scientific plant name is Cajanus cajan from the Fabaceae family, and they originated in India.
India, exactly. In India, India
Yes,
is one of the biggest consumers of gandules or pigeon peas in the world. So and I love food history. I love researching where food comes from. And it came from India. And if we really think about it, moved west all the way to us. It probably came on African slave ships
yes.
with
So
Africans.
what happened was that before many
Hmm.
many years they had the trades, and
Yep.
in the trade market these seeds, these beautiful seeds, traveled to Africa. And in
Hmm.
Africa, they developed new varieties.
Yep.
So they ended up having new names. Like they have the Congo pea and the Angola pea.
Hmm.
And it's very interesting because, yes, that's where Puerto Rico got their gandules.
Exactly. And a
Like
lot of the
all the
Caribbean
African
islands.
Yes, all the
Exactly.
African descendants that were
Yep.
coming, that were enslaved,
That were brought.
were,
Yes.
yes, they were brought,
Yes. Yes.
but they will bring all these beautiful seeds for them and their children, and that's how it was preserved.
Yep.
And for
And it's
me,
super
only,
important.
only speaking about it, it's like whoa.
It's really exciting to me because I can also see how it moved across the islands in the Caribbean. Because if you look at Jamaica, Jamaica has gungo peas and rice, and they make their gandules. It's lighter. The rice is lighter in color than ours is because they don't add achote oil like we do. The Dominican Republic has moro, and it's the same thing, but it's just made in different ways, and it shows our link to our past, to our culture, our African heritage, but it also shows how we intertwine that with things like pork and things like the achote seed and sofrito that ended up getting added to the mix a lot later. I think gandules, arroz con gandules is one of the quintessential Puerto Rican dishes because it combines all of our cultures, the Taino, the Spaniard, and the African culture together into one little pot. Kind of like a
Yes,
Puerto Rican.
yes, definitely.
Hmm.
Plus, I wanted to share the amazing medicinal properties that this plant has. Because above being delicious, I'm
Yes,
pretty
it's
sure
important
whoever
to
has
be
tried
healthy
arroz
too.
con
Yeah.
gandules, they know there is a delicious rice.
Yes.
But I didn't know these like until I started researching it. But these peas are anti-cancerogen, antioxidant, antibacterial, and they help with the liver. And if you make a tea with the leaves in the Chinese medicine, they say they kill the parasites.
Now, I didn't know that. I know it's a great source of protein and fiber too. So that's
Yeah.
something that especially vegans and vegetarians who don't eat meat can get a lot of protein and fiber from gandules as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I didn't
So
know
I
about the
think it's
tea
a
leaves.
wonderful addition to any garden. It
Yes.
helps with the nitrogen in the air as well. I mean, there's so many beautiful things about this plant and gandules that I mean, like, I'm not gonna lie, I love it. And all
Yes,
this
me too.
conversation started because my friend Marta has this beautiful website with all these recipes. Every time
A
she
lot of
posts
recipes.
something, I'm like, oh my goodness, it's so delicious. And she posted this picture of the arroz con gandules, the way she makes
Yes.
it, which I love because, by the way, she also offers her own recipe for sofrito, her own recipe for sazon. That way you don't have to buy that brand that we won't speak
The
of.
brand that we
And
don't mention.
yeah, because at this moment, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to reclaim what is actually from our cultures and
Absolutely.
also reclaiming the food, the flavors that we want to leave for the next generations. And that's something that I am very passionate about because I think a lot of parents, especially immigrant parents, sometimes we move on, with the hurry life, with everything, and
Very
we
much so.
forget that
The culture is
a
lost.
wonderful
It is
way.
lost.
Yes,
Yes,
yes, in a wonderful way
absolutely.
to reclaim a lot of the identities, reclaim a lot of even, the stories from the family
Yes.
is through the food, through the, so I was very, I'm pretty sure every Puerto Rican has like a story about arroz con gandules.
Yes,
There
probably.
songs about it.
Yes, there are songs. I mean, it's such a part of our culture, and that's why it's important to me to make sure that I feed my children food from both of my cultures because I'm half black and half Puerto Rican, and I want my children to embrace where their ancestors came from and the foods that our ancestors ate. And I want them to understand that, we come from a very vibrant culture on both sides. And there's nothing for us to feel shamed about or nothing for us to be embarrassed about or nothing that we should hide as a culture. In fact, there's people that have never been to Puerto Rico that I've met as a military spouse who love our food because they've been introduced to it through their time in the military. So it can't be that bad if everybody wants to eat it. So why, if that's our culture, shouldn't we be proud to display it, to learn how to cook it, to learn the reasons why we cook it? We come from a slave culture. That's all there is to it. There's nothing, we shouldn't hide that fact. It's the truth. Both of the cultures that make up being Puerto Rican were enslaved. And if we go back to the root of it, where did our food come from? Was it food that we ate because our ancestors had the necessity to eat it? They had no choice but to eat it. And how did they make it so that it became such an integral part of who we are as people? Plátanos, gandules, yuca, these types of vegetables or root vegetables came from somewhere, and now they're so ingrained in who we are as a people and in our culture that we would be doing ourselves and our children a huge disservice to not teach them these things. I want my kids to be able to recognize these foods as theirs, as part of their culture.
Yeah. And to go
It's very
above
important.
and beyond, which will be, I always tell my kids to cook it, to teach their kids how to make it,
Yes.
and also recognize when other, like I call them vultures or culture.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yes.
think like a lot of people around the world are not even acknowledging all the efforts of many cultures around the world trying to preserve these ingredients and the recipes and the flavors. And they forget, that a lot of this deliciousness comes from a culture and a group of people that many times they despise. And
Yeah.
I found it hilarious. I remember the time that I kind of like find out that the Ku Klux Klan has a Taco Tuesday as a fundraiser, and I'm like,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
which mind, will they eat tacos, but they will despise, people from Mexico.
Yeah.
And that is exactly what happens when we lost connection between the origins
Yeah.
and the people. Because
Well, it's
nothing
because
is
you want
about
to.
it.
It's nothing different. It's no different than colonizing an island or colonizing a country. You go in there and you claim everything is now yours, even though these may have been civilizations that existed thousands of years before you even, decided to light a fire. And now you're claiming this food as your own. It's something that I really try to hold other food bloggers accountable. I am a military brat. Both of my parents were in the Air Force. My husband was in the Army. So I've literally traveled the world, and I've picked up cuisines and recipes from all over the world. And the one thing I always make sure to do when I'm writing a recipe for my blog is to acknowledge where I got the recipe from, right? Because I'm a black Puerto Rican girl from New York. I didn't get babka from Eastern Europe from my grandmother. I got it from somebody's bubba who taught me how to make it in Brooklyn, New York. So when they teach me these things, it's only right that I carry on their legacy of that recipe by explaining to people where I got this from, what the history is behind it. And oh, by the way, I didn't create it. So when I see food bloggers claiming to have created tamales or, tacos or pastelón or whatever creating, I call them out on it because it's unfair to the people who actually slaved to get that recipe the way it is. People who find their identity and their culture in that recipe. For you as some random person who just found it at your local taco stand the other night to claim that it's yours and you created it. It's appropriation.
Yes.
It's colonizing a recipe, and you can't do that. So that's one thing that I'm on a mission to do for myself. I hold myself accountable so that I don't do it. But I also want other food bloggers to acknowledge where you get this recipe from.
Yes.
It's important to do that.
Martha, because what we're seeing right now is even like they're trying to patent like some of these foods. And in my mind, it's like, oh my gosh, only a wicked mind will even get to that stand of, like thinking like, I'm going to capitalize in something that is not even from my own culture first. And second, that, you're thinking about, like having a copyright over something that is being someone else's culture.
It's shameful.
I don't know how to explain that. A lot of people tell me like that's capitalism. I think like that's jackassery.
That's colonization. That's what it is.
You can do that, imagine.
It's colonization.
They do it all the time.
It's happening a lot. It's happening a lot. But I know one thing: if somebody tries to copyright pasteles, they're gonna have a hell of a fight from Puerto Ricans. I'll tell you that much. Like that's not gonna happen. But it's all about people being money hungry. When you don't have a culture to cling to, you rob somebody else of theirs. So for me, it's like find out who you are.
They have a culture to cling, into, but they
don't know what it is.
They found it so hollow, and they are in denial because a lot of people, let's face it, they're not even acknowledging that they're coming from the colonizers communities and all these mentality. And I'm not saying like I hear it all the time, like they're like, oh, but that was my ancestors. Yes, but you know better. You should do better. You should acknowledge that
It's such
whatever they did at that time was not right, was not okay, until this
yeah.
day is not okay.
Yeah, for me it's important because like I said, both of my cultures mean so much to me because of who I am as a person. There have been times where I was discriminated against by white people, by black people for being not black enough, by Puerto Ricans for not being Puerto Rican enough.
This is the way we can help to be sure that in the future we don't do that. We don't teach our children. We don't provide next generations with means of doing something like it, because
Yeah.
it's not fine. We are not really condoning that type of behavior, not anymore. We're not staying quiet with that type of behaviors. And
Yeah.
because our children, the ones that are growing up at this moment, they're multicultural as well.
Yes.
They don't have to prescribe to certain label that, like, but we know where we come from, and we should be able to give them that information, and support that in many ways we can. And in one way is through cooking, through the
Yes.
ingredients, through the stories that we can share.
My children love the thought of going out to eat, and if we go out to eat somewhere, they don't like McDonald's. If anything, we're eating something ethnic. We're eating Thai food or Vietnamese food or Cuban food. And for me, it's important because children are taught hate. People who hate are taught to hate. You don't grow up hating people. You're taught to hate people. And I do believe that the more you expose your children to different cuisines and cultures, they're not going to grow up to hate. They're not going to grow up to be, racist or prejudiced. They're going to appreciate the fact that had it not been for this immigrant coming to this country and bringing their food and their culture along with them, I wouldn't have this to eat in America. I would have to go somewhere else.
And cooking it and
Exactly.
farming it and picking up
Exactly.
in the field.
Exactly.
That's another step that I feel like as parents, like we can expose our children to a lot of foods and different flavors as well. But we need to also teach children the way the food system is being implemented at this moment in the earth, which is way that is not sustainable in the long run. And that's something that I'm very passionate about it, because I believe that from that, their future depends on that, from the next generation to understand how food is farmed, how food is brought to the table, how, like how many people have to deal with a lot of discrimination and low standards of living just picking up your food.
And how hard it is to do it. Like, yes. We had a garden one year, and I didn't know how many green bean plants to plant, and I planted way too many and had to harvest these green beans. And this is a garden plot. It is not a farm. I'm picking green beans for the sake of my family, not for the country. And, you tell me how much to pay for these green beans, I'm going to pay it, because I know how hard this work is on a small scale. So when you have gardens that your children are a part of, and they sow and they tend the garden and they, weed the garden, they find a deeper appreciation for the food they're eating. And it's not cute.
Because I have a lot of issues with people that, only show pretty pictures of their gardens. And I have done it, like I love sharing pretty pictures of my garden, of course. Right. But I did a lot stories one time saying, like, one thing is, what you see on Instagram or whatever in your internet. And another one is really working hands-on in your garden. Having a garden is tough, especially if you have to be outside most of the time. You have to weed. If it's a no pesticide garden like mine, is organic. I have to do everything by hand. And it's a lot of work, and I cannot even imagine, like at this moment, people that are working in the fields, like for example in California with the fires, and they
It's
have to
yeah.
wear these masks because we are in a time of a pandemic, and you can't believe how much they pay these people.
Oh
And
yeah.
that's why,
It's
that's something that
insane.
I'm very passionate as well about thinking like we need to teach these children that, every time you choose not to eat these,
Mhm.
this is effort to bring to your
Yeah.
table, my love. This is not like, oh, you don't want to try it,
Now
and
that's
I think,
I'm a very strict parent in that sense that you eat what I feed you, and just because there have been times, even especially when my husband and I first got married, where we couldn't afford to eat the food we wanted to eat. We had to eat what we could afford to get, and it was garbage food. So now I have a deeper appreciation about food, and I was a chef back then too. So you would think that I would appreciate it more, but when you don't have it, you value it. So when it comes to our children, it is this is what's for dinner, this is what you're going to eat. If we go to somebody else's house, you're going to eat what they serve you. I mean, granted, if you have an allergy, obviously don't eat it, but
yes,
you're going to
yes.
eat what they serve you because it was made with love, and it was made with things that some people are still starving. There's still starvation in the world today, and I think a lot of people forget that. And food just goes to waste.
Oh, yes.
There's an
Oh,
epidemic of food waste in this country that is insane.
it's crazy. I remember going to the cafeteria, at their schools and
Mhm.
noticing, all the amounts of food that end up in the trash. And their explanation is like, they cannot do anything with that food because by law, like
Right.
I'm pretty sure all those laws were shaped in any way or form by the corporations that, sell the food to the
I
school.
want you to keep buying the food and wasting the
Yes,
food.
but
Yes,
bottom
absolutely.
line, I mean, there's so many issues with food at this moment around the earth. I think for me, the most urgent one is the issue that a lot of these companies want to monopolize on seeds, and they're doing
Oh yes,
GMOs.
yeah,
Like they're altering food that won't have seeds in the future. Like we're
yeah,
talking about something like that, that I won't be able to have my own Gandules
yes.
because these corporations will be having the rights over a seed.
But you understand that even if they didn't have the rights over seeds, we're not doing due diligence with our children and with future generations to teach them what to do with seeds. So if we get to the point, there is a Chinese YouTuber who creates almost everything that she consumes. She gets it from her garden, she makes it, and I watch her and she brings me such peace. Right now we're building a home, which also makes me think about the laborers who are building my home right now in this rain.
Yeah.
We're building our home, and my goal is to have a sustainable farm to feed me and my family and my neighbors. My children need to learn how to work the land. They need to learn how to, cultivate their own crops for the sake of feeding themselves and their children in the future. It seems such a foreign concept to us, especially if we live in urban areas, but it's so important to teach our children these skills. They can't just know how to play video games or,
Yeah.
watch the TV. They
Yeah.
need to
But
know
we're
how to work with
looking
their
to
hands.
change that. And I think,
Hmm.
what is happening because of all these laws and the things that are happening, the most important thing that we can do as parents and parents that are involved in this, and we know
Hmm.
about the systems behind food and the importance in our cultural background.
Right.
uh, the most important thing we can do is, like raise an awareness and teach our children about
Yes.
seeds. Teach our
Yeah.
children about how your food became food. It's not like you go to
Exactly.
the store and get it from there. It's not going to happen. And
Exactly.
I hear a lot of parents, having the struggle, especially with younger children. We both have older children now.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
we went through that, and we will be speaking out of experience. Yes, some things our kids are going to be picky about,
Right.
but You're the one who is buying the food at your home. You're the one who's putting the food somehow in a plate. Try
Yeah.
to make a variety of flavors, and
Yes.
also be a model. I hear a lot of parents telling their kids like, you have to eat it, and then I'm like, but why aren't you eating it? Oh, because I don't like it.
Yeah, I don't like
I'm
vegetables.
like, but if you don't eat the salad, the kid is not gonna eat the
Yeah.
salad. Yeah.
Getting them involved. When my husband was sent to Korea for a year, my kids were only 6 years old. And I was so desperate for help because at the time I was taking care of my mother full time. I was homeschooling them. They were 6. They're twins. So that in and of itself is a whole beast to conquer. And oh, by the way, my husband is gone for a year to Korea. I needed help. And the kids were so interested and eager in helping me in the kitchen. They thought that unloading the dishwasher was the best thing ever. And they loved to help me in the kitchen when it came to preparing foods. When you get your kids in the kitchen involved in cooking and, measuring, they feel like they take ownership of the meal. So when it comes time to sit down to eat, they enjoy it even more because they helped to create it. So when I have friends that say they just won't eat, help them, get them in the kitchen. Ask them what they want to do. Ask them what they want to eat. Teach them how to make it. You'll get help as mom or dad. And then they get to understand that it's not, bad to eat this thing that you just made. I think a lot of times the kids don't want to eat certain things because they're not familiar with it.
Exactly.
They're just like, I don't know what it is.
It's not something that you're used to it. I get it, but that's something that we also need to think about. That's another conversation that we may have, like being open-minded. Because I have noticed that a lot of people who are in general not that open-minded about other people are not that open-minded about their food
About
choices.
food, exactly.
Like, why do you have to eat only this? Like,
and it's
like something from Ghana, or why don't you try something from Ethiopia? Like, have you ever tried an Arab food? And all of them look at me like, no, like looks horrible.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to try it. Like, I have even friends of my children that come here and I offer them rice and beans, and they look at me like I just served them who knows what.
Oh,
and I ask them, have you ever tried rice and beans? No. There's
Puerto Rican children now. My mom, I took my mom before she died back to Puerto Rico for the first time in 50 years. She'd been back. And we stopped by her great aunt's house, and she made a traditional Puerto Rican meal. I mean, like arroz con habichuelas with patas in the habichuelas. And I mean, it was pasteles, very traditional, authentic Puerto Rican food. And my kids finished their plates, and she was shocked because she said, my grandchildren don't like to eat Puerto Rican food. They don't like eating arroz con gandules or rice and beans or, anything that I make. They like eating McDonald's. So to see that your children enjoy it is surprising, because I think at the time when they were like maybe 9 or 10, and it was just shocking to her to see these kids eating this old school Puerto Rican food. And it broke my heart.
That's a huge issue, especially with immigrant children, but the new generations, because the same thing happens with speaking Spanish.
Yeah.
Like, they will resist, or, speaking your language of origin, they will, like, the kids will be like, I don't want it. Why do I have to speak Spanish? I don't want to speak Spanish. And I think a lot of people know, that I am a conscious parenting. I did attachment parenting with both of my children. I do not believe in, like punishment for the sake of punishment, like messing with them, like I don't believe in la chancla culture either, which, like,
my mom sure believed in the chancla culture.
But I think there are a lot of parents that are, losing focus on what their real purpose in educating new generation is, and empower themselves to be really, strong about what we do on our homes. And it's the same as with values. Like if you're gonna, like at my house, both of my children know we only speak Spanish.
Yeah.
I don't care if your friend or the neighbor is not speaking Spanish. Like for me, it's very important that we learn languages, and I
It
do
is.
know,
I mean,
and
you're
I
giving them the
acknowledge that
gift.
part.
It is a
And
very,
same with
it's a
food.
gift that you're giving. And a lot of parents, part of it I think is laziness. And then when you have multicultural parents, like both of my parents, my dad didn't speak Spanish.
Yeah.
My mom, used to get punished if she spoke English in her house growing up. So it was this thing of you take the path of least resistance, which is fine. I
Yeah,
mean,
because
most of us do
many
that
times
anyways,
that's all you have energy for. And
Yes.
I get it. But that's why
Yes.
I say, my encouragement for parents in general is like, what do you want for your children to have in the future?
Yes.
Do you think this is important? And yes, I get it. Like for a lot of parents, that is not a battle they want to do, especially with
Right.
food. Like I hear, like, no,
That's
that's
true.
not a battle I want to do. I'm just gonna keep dying them their chicken nuggets.
Oof.
And I say, like it's not a judgment. It's like,
It just
like
makes me sad.
really think about the future of your child, not only
Yeah.
nutritional future, but all the knowledge and the flavors that your
Mhm.
baby can have. It's like, and it will only take certain amount of your time and effort. And yes, at this time and age, that may be a lot. And I'm not a chef. I'm an aspiring. I love cooking when I have time. I hate
Right.
cleaning after cooking, but I
That's why I
do
have
it.
kids. They can
I
clean.
do it. I definitely do it because I do believe that is a wonderful way where I can teach both of my kids that there's so many other possibilities. That there's not
And
only one way to rule the
there's
world.
so many other cuisines and cultures to
Oh,
eat. I mean, it's just I get excited when I know that I'm going to a big city or a different country because I'm just planning the food trips. I don't really care about anything else except what am I going to eat and when am I going to eat it. And even here in San Antonio, there's a good mix of places. It's nothing like New York, but there's a good mix of cuisines here, and I will opt to go find something completely different. I rarely ever go out to eat Puerto Rican food or soul food or food from the black culture because I can make that at home.
yeah.
But like you said, Ethiopian
Katie makes
food,
the best waffles and fried chicken. Oh my gosh.
Erica,
And you
listen,
guys
I
need
love
to
fried
go
chicken,
see her
okay?
website. Like, I'm serious. I'm serious. Oh my goodness. Everything she makes is delicious.
I am extremely passionate about food. I mean, I watch food documentaries, I read books about food, I research food, I play video games about food. I love food, and I think, if we shared more meals together, we could eradicate racism, we could eradicate discrimination. If you open your home or your mind and go visit other people or go to restaurants that you normally wouldn't go to and eat their food, you will not be racist anymore. You can't be. It's impossible because you'll fall in love with that food.
Well, it's
And you'll realize,
chemistry, it's magic. Food is
yes,
chemistry and magic. Like
food
everything
is
I
really
do,
chemistry. It really is.
I
Yeah.
make like seriously, I pray over it. I do all
Yeah.
my magic over my food because I'm doing it from the heart.
It's
And that's
love.
something
Yes.
that you cannot replace with chicken nuggets from the frozen. I'm not saying
It's
like
true.
once in a while. I'm not saying, like that's not judgment. I get it. Like a lot of us, I'm trying to juggle so many hats as well. I'm a
Yes.
busy mom and I'm a busy woman. But also remember, if you develop habits since your
Mhm.
childhood, those things will carry on
They'll stay with
throughout
you.
life. So if you teach your children to, like, for example, have a garden and where
Mhm.
it comes from and go pick up, your herbs, which I usually do with my kids, those are added levels in which you are giving such a gift to next generations, to your own kids.
It's true.
Besides them having a different perspective about the world that, like only speaking today about Gandules. Gandules has all the cultures.
Yeah, it really does.
Like
It
every
truly
culture has
does.
a Gandule. And
I genuinely believe that only the United States is the only culture that does not have gandules. Because even in Europe, they eat gandules, and it's just it's something that we
well,
need
I
to
think it's
expose
already
more people to.
changing because Puerto Ricans changed that.
That's
They
true.
already changed that like a
That's
long
true.
time
No,
ago.
we've absolutely brought it to the United States. If nobody else has, between the Indians and the Puerto Ricans, we got gandules here in the
Yes,
States.
no, I mean, I think a lot of people are still in denial about what's the reality around the world. There's not a
Yeah.
monolithic anymore. We are
Mhm.
a huge uh, team of different cultures,
Yes.
and acknowledging that not one culture is above the rest. You're
Exactly.
fine. You're teaching your
Yes.
children great. So have cultural respect for others peoples and other
Mhm.
people's cuisines. Do not
Yeah.
appropriate do not appropriate them because that's
Right.
not what it's about. Like you need to respect their knowledge and their heritage.
Exactly.
And then at the end, just enjoy the magic that food brings to your life and
Yes.
our life. I think it's such a joy to, be in a place where we are still so privileged to choose flavors, to choose a food, because like you say, there's so many people around the world that they don't have any selections or what should I eat today? Like
Yeah, we're
no,
the
they
only
eat
culture that
whatever
goes,
is
we go
available
to
for them.
stores. Yeah, we go to stores looking for what to buy, whereas other people go to markets to buy what they need. So
Or
we
not
we are
even
very
that.
privileged,
They
you
have to
know,
grow it themselves, and that's the
or grow it
issue,
themselves.
with the
Yes.
food production around the world this moment. Like a lot of these monocrops and a lot of
Mhm.
exports of food, from places that many times we don't even know where they come from.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
why I'm also very very vocal about like why don't you buy your local products? Like find
Yeah.
an organic
Mhm.
farm near your house. Support that business and support
Yeah.
the local farmers. Eat what is in season. It's such a wonderful thing. And then once in a while you can kind of like have your things that are from far away, from
Right.
beyond. Or when you
Yeah.
travel, if you have the privilege of traveling, because that's another huge privilege that a lot of people do not have access to. But
Right.
that is something that we have to teach children now, because
Mhm.
this is unsustainable. I don't see any way in the next decade that this
Yeah.
will keep happening, and the food system is in danger at this moment. I'm not even exaggerating. I feel it, like hearing it, especially from people who are guardians of seeds around the world. They're very worried about what's happening with the GMOs and this
Yeah.
corporations trying to profit over food food
Food has
something that
changed
is
a
our
lot since
base.
I started cooking. Food has changed dramatically since I started cooking, and I think a lot of people do. It essentially what it boils down to is you need to know where your food comes from. And if you can make it so you grow your own food, that's great. But supporting your local farmers and your local, you know, growers or butchers or dairy farms is so important because you put a face to the product, and that helps you appreciate it and respect the product more and to use it in a way. People think I'm kind of odd when I cook because I do. I talk to my food and I feel my food, and I like I love food. But and they laugh because when I speak about food, I'm so overtly passionate about it, and I have no problem with being that way, but it's because I truly respect the fact that I have this to work with, and I know a lot of people are not in a position to work with what they want to work with, but they have to work with what they have to work with. There are people in this country right now who have to survive on $7 a day to feed their family of five or six. And I can't wrap my mind around that. I used to be in that position. And it
Yeah.
was a very disheartening feeling to be forced into getting junk food because you can't afford fresh food or organic produce. So as people who have access to that, we need to, one, be very appreciative because most of us are just a paycheck away from being that person that has to survive on $7 a day. And two, we need to learn how to produce food from its rawest form so that we don't have to worry about, overpaying for, preservatives or things that are not good for us anyways. And we can cook from scratch because that is the cheapest, most efficient way to cook.
Yeah.
And then we need to respect the fact that there are people who are hungry right now in our country. And whatever we can do as good neighbors to help them, we need to be doing. We need to donate to food banks. We need to donate produce, if we can, to food banks and fresh fruits and fresh vegetables because a lot of food banks can't get that stuff in. So
Yeah.
if we have a neighbor that we know is hungry, we need to be that good neighbor to help them.
I think that is the part of the mercy part. I think, we should go even deeper. I believe like there's certain companies at this moment and corporations that will be definitely boycotted. There are different lists out there. If anyone who's seen these, that you should never, ever buy any products from them because they rob other communities around the world from their local resources, natural resources. I will name one of them, Nestle. Nestle is one of the most nefarious corporations around the world, and you can research it. It's not even. So I try to make a very conscientious effort from my part, using my money, using my privilege. Don't support those corporations. Don't support those companies that do not value life and do not value food. Period.
Yes, that is very important. You have to make a stand. You have to have a stand because if not, then what's our purpose in this planet if it's not to? All I want to do is be a good contribution to this planet that I'm in. All I want to do as a mother is raise children who love other people regardless of their skin, race, their culture, their religion. I want to raise good people. I won't say the word that I usually say, but I don't want to raise my kids to be jerks is all I'm saying. I want to raise good people, and I can only do that by showing them how the rest of the world lives because this isn't normal. Our society is not what is going on around the world. We are a very privileged society.
It's very privileged.
Very much so. Very much so.
And that's why we have to use that privilege. So my message today is like, yes, use the food, use your cultural knowledge and flavors to do that for your own children, but also use it as a privilege to think about how can we support the food system in general, but also our children in the future. I think a lot about next generations. That's something that makes me think a lot. What are they going to be able to try in the next few years? Are they going to be able to find certain foods that are going to be natural, or they're going to be chemically altered or engineer altered? They will never know the true flavor, like, for example, of a guanabana. I mean, like,
that would be so
I ask myself, that question because it's a real fear. And for me, I know there's many families out there that are thinking like we are thinking. And we are investing ourselves in teaching our children these recipes, in teaching our children that, yes, these are sacred food. And what you say, about like I'm pretty sure arroz con gandules was invented by a grandma that only had the gandules from her patio and maybe some rice, and she needed to feed all her family, and she had some, leftovers from the pig. I don't know. I'm pretty sure that recipe came from a mother who was a magician in the kitchen, and
to this day it still does the same thing. It still serves the same purpose to this day. There is not a Puerto Rican or a Dominican or anybody from a Hispanic Caribbean culture that has not woken up on a Saturday morning after your parents had a big party on Friday night and eaten arroz con gandules from the caldero on the stove that morning for breakfast. It is still a very integral part of our culture and what we identify with as sustainment food, but it's also comfort food now. Now we make it for parties and celebrations and big events and holidays. Before, they probably made it to survive, to make it through the night with
and
something
they have
filling.
to feed a lot of people.
Exactly.
I'm always thinking about that because when people tell me like, oh, but we cannot feed so many people, I'm always thinking in the back of my head, like, how do they do it in India? Because in India, I don't know if you have seen how they cook, but it's like for millions of people. It's like a non-stop. I have volunteer actually in some of those kitchens. It's a non-stop for days.
Yeah.
Like everybody chopping, everybody doing chapatis, and they feed everyone, and everybody's welcome to come to the table, and everybody,
because it's a community
and
effort.
I hear people telling me like, no, we cannot feed so and so. Oh, we don't have enough of it.
We don't want to. That's the difference between them and for the simple out for ourselves. We can't be stingy or we'll never get back.
I see how generous they are.
What is going on? Hold on 1 second.